a little bit distant for me. I knew it from my community and growing up, and all my friends had gone to an HBCU, those who were able to go to college in those days, but it wasn't my direct experience. I came to North Carolina to attend North Carolina State University, again, not an HBCU, and I got my doctorate there. Shortly after, I became director of the African American Cultural Center. And so I had my opportunity to establish my own little quarter of the, well, not quite a quarter, but my own little corner in the institution that was filled with African and African descendant people all day long. My students were Black, and we did many, many things together that I'm sure those of you who attended HBCUs were engaged in doing. As a part of those responsibilities, I was also involved with the national group, the Association for Black Culture Centers, the ABCC. And I frequently took students with me to those conferences where they were able to meet with other students who were attending largely the PWIs. And there was a great collective there. And one of the lectures that I will always remember was given by Dr. Naeem Akbar. And he was admonishing the students to understand and appreciate the fact that there was some type of Black culture center on these PWI campuses. And he went on, and he said, finally, but the HBCU, it was always the African American Cultural Center. When I finally arrived at St. Augustine's University about 20 years ago, I understood exactly what he meant. And I've been there loving it ever since.
Thank you very much for your introduction and some of your experience as far as HBCUs are concerned. We are going to go from there. How about Coach Harold Johnson now? We just call him Coach. This gentleman is also another strong, long-lasting face on Cheney University's campus. Coach, I think, took the team to some national championships. He's worked with some fraternities. He's worked in admissions. He's done a lot of things on that campus to build some young men. Even myself and my, he's not, I don't even know if Coach is older than me or not, but has had an influence in my life and my son's. So Coach Johnson, what do you like to say about yourself and historically Black colleges so far?
Well, I'd like to say welcome to all the panelists, my co-panelists, and to Dr. Miller. It was an honor. When you gave me the call about being a participant, I just got so excited. And believe it or not, I've talked to kids for over 36 years on a secondary level at the institution, and I was nervous today. I don't know much, and from coaching, and I've been in, but I was nervous today. But what I like to say myself, along with my colleague, Professor Walker, it has been so important, especially the importance of Cheney University as it relates to the proximity to Philadelphia. I remember when Dr. Miller was a student through NYSP. I was fortunate enough to work with his mother. We've been together. We worked together for the last 36 years when I first got hired at Cheney. And from there, we've been friends, and I've watched him grow, and I'm so proud of him. And I know that the importance of what the campus meant to him to be able in a college environment as a young student, as a young person, and how it helped to lay the track for where he was headed to. So it doesn't surprise me that he is Dr. Miller at this point, and I'm so proud of him. I do know that what the HBCUs have done for our communities, for our young people, is so important. I myself did not attend as an undergraduate a HBCU, but I ended up getting my master's degree from Cheney University, in which really kind of solidified me being here as being a Cheney alum. And there are so many across the country who are so proud, as Professor Walker said, Dr. Walker said, Cheney made. That's our new tag that we use. And you'll be surprised how many young people all across the country have been Cheney made. And we're very proud of that and how we view our students and what we give back to the community. So I'll just stop right there and let the rest of my co-panelists say what they have to say.
Thank you very much, Coach. So I saved this young lady for last. They say save the best for last, but that's hard to do because we have a top-notch panel right here. So Dr. McLaughlin, she is with North Carolina Central University, better known just as Central. That's kind of what they just call it. So Central's another school that's very near to me. My father actually got his degree, his master's degree from Central, and it's in Durham where my roots are. And my son didn't know that my father got his degree there, but went back and did his principal certification at Central, and had the privilege to cross paths with Dr. McLaughlin. So, and I hope I'm saying your last name correctly. So I'm going to get out of the way, and Dr. McLaughlin, if you'd like to say anything about yourself and anything else about HBCUs to get us started, I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to be here with you this afternoon. My name is Dr. Dion Mclaughlin. I am the Executive Director of Critical Reflections on Race and Equity Initiative, and I'm also an Associate Professor at North Carolina Central University. Our university was founded by Dr. James E. Shepard in 1910, and I am a British-born Black Jamaican American educator. I'm a former elementary and high school principal. I have, my new book is entitled Personalized Principal Leadership Practices, 8 Strategies for Leading Equitable, High-Achieving Schools. And I've made presentations for ASCD at their national conference for principals in Illinois and Indiana, as well as at the National Association of Secondary School Principals, the National Association of Elementary School Principals. And I've taught anti-racism and effective school practices for K-12 teachers and administrators, and developed and taught a course, Critical Reflections on Racial Issues, a Contemporary and Historical Study for high school students. And I've taught portions of that course to undergrads and also to graduate students as well over the years, and recently developed an equity certificate program here at NCCU, and developed a new course, Leading High Achieving Equitable Schools for Black and Latinx students. And for me, part of the question as we sort of move in our conversation today is, what do you think about when you think about HBCUs? And for me, prior to 1964, that's when HBCUs were established. And that was at a time, of course, when Black students were not permitted to attend any of the other colleges and institutions in the country. And so at present, there are 101 HBCUs across the country, more than 288,000 students, with Alabama being the state with the most HBCUs at 14, followed closely behind by North Carolina. We have 11 HBCUs in our state. You're probably very familiar with a number of famous people who went to HBCUs. I'm sure you know that Oprah Winfrey went to an HBCU. She graduated from Tennessee State University. Our Vice President, Kamala Harris, graduated from Howard University. And Stephen A. Smith, who is an ESPN commentator, graduated from Winston-Salem State University, which is also located in North Carolina. And I'm sure there are many others that you're familiar with who have gone to HBCUs. Recently, and again, more information that you're probably familiar with is McCure, I always want to butcher his name, McCure Maker, recently made the decision to attend an HBCU, to attend Howard, and he made that choice. And by making that choice, he became the highest ranked college basketball recruit ever to choose an HBCU. And he made that choice over the University of Kentucky. He made that choice over UCLA. And there are many others that are making that decision as well, given the choice that he made. Over the past 2 years, we've seen phenomenal growth in historically Black colleges and universities, particularly starting in 2020. So our numbers have been growing exponentially in terms of students who are choosing to attend HBCUs. And I want to take a few minutes to show an HBCU experience. And Dr. Miller, you'll let me know if this is that time to show that clip or whether I wait a little bit. I'll let me know. I can go ahead?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to show you a clip, and I'll tell you what I'm about to show you. So I'm going to show you a clip. It's the 215 member Southern University Human Jukebox Band. They have made they participated in 3 US presidential inaugurations, 4 Sugar Bowl appearances, and they have participated in 5 Super Bowls. And so I'm going to make sure that I can share my screen, which I'm sure I can. Share my screen, fantastic. And then I will clip right over to share that. Let me pull it up to make sure I've got it here, fabulous. All right, so I'm gonna share the screen. I wanted to make sure it was up first, and I have it, great. And I think my volume's up, gonna make sure all those things are working, right? Guys can hear me?
When you share, make sure the sound button in the bottom right-hand corner is clicked, or we won't hear the sound.
Let's make sure. Let me do that first. Okay, so in the bar, under video, or where do I check for that to make sure?
Once you click share screen and you have all the screens you can choose from, down at the bottom right hand of the corner, there's a little radio
share
button.
Sound and optimize video clip. I should do both of those, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, great. So I am ready to share that.
And we lost your video. Oh.
All right, you guys have my video now?
Yes, ma'am. We're good to go.
Fantastic. So I'm going to press play. This is going to last about 4 minutes.
This Southern University marching band is led by drum major, two school, white. Show him, show him, show him, show him, show him, show him some love. When I'm taking through a high-step downfield drill under the sounds of Shaka Khan, entitled, Ain't Nobody. Without the music, poetry in motion, patterns in motion, with style and class, the Hbcu. A Southern University marching band is often imitated, but never ever duplicated. The Hbcu would like to pay tribute to Dr. Miller for his service to Southern University and the Hbcu. Thank you.
course, no good time to stop that share. They go on for another amazing 5 minutes or so, but I definitely wanted to share some of that.
Wonderful.
Outstanding, outstanding. Thank you for sharing. I'm watching the chat. There was a lot of little chatter going on inside the chat. So that's like well, I'm just the moderator, but I'm not supposed to say, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. The fraternities, the sororities, the sports teams, the band. These are some of the pieces of culture that exist in HBCUs. One of the things that just lifelong experiences that you never forget, build some great friends and connections and networks. So I'm going to kind of switch gears a little bit into some content or questions that I have, but I want to kind of throw a curveball at you, if you will, the panelists, because we did send questions ahead of time. Yesterday was the first day of the Black History Month here in 2022. And there were over a dozen bomb threats at HBCUs across the country. So I have two questions. One was, were your HBCUs listed in those bomb threats? And is everyone okay? And secondly, how do you feel about that? You know, is it motivating? Is it discouraging? Is it a time to be at arms? Is it surprising? Is it confirmation? I mean, a little bit about that. If anyone wants to jump in, because I know I didn't prepare you with that one, you can just unmute and jump in.
I'll start off just by saying, to my knowledge, Cheney wasn't on the original list. I think a list came out on Monday, and one came out yesterday as well. For me, I think this really cements to us the importance of why we are here and why we need to continue to do what we do. The climate in our country was not the best under the former presidential leadership, and it brought a lot of underground stuff up to the forefront. And because of that, I think, and I'm sure my colleagues will jump in here, we have to continue to, as the kids say, stay woke and forge forward in what we do to prepare, our young people for what's to come.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to add just a little bit, and that is that we, to my knowledge, we did not have our name on either of those lists either. But I want to remind us, and hopefully if there are younger people watching, I want to remind them that this is not new. They have to understand that we grew out of this kind of oppression. We grew out of our schools being stormed, of our schools being firebombed, our schools being destroyed. And the spirit that carried us through that is the same spirit that will carry us through this. And so they should not feel disheartened by any of what's going on. This is normal for other people to misbehave in this way. We continue.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else like to chime in on that, or before we move on?
Well, I would like to say that, as I'm going to echo Dr. Moses, is that it isn't new. It should, for our students, we cannot, it exists. They read about it, but now we're living in a time zone, as Professor Walker, Dr. Walker just said, that what just happened in the last year or so, if we look back, a lot of these underground organizations have risen up. They feel they have a voice and want to threaten. But one thing about HBCUs is that we've endured. We've been through all of these things, the threats, the lynchings, the discrimination, but the HBCUs, they still endure. We've lost some along the way since the HBCUs were established. But again, because of other factors that they've created to sort of hold us back or to shut us down, but we still exist in this, and we have to prepare this group of young people for our future. They have to be prepared and to know that it's real, that these things exist today, and they may still be there 10, 20 years from now, but we must be prepared to continue to keep our doors open and keep these opportunities for for them to be able to forge on and to keep us strong.
Thank you, sir.
Just to add to what has already been shared, and certainly to echo the sentiments of the other panelists, I would say or share that for NCCU, we did have a bomb threat. So there was one that was made January the 4th, which of course endured hours and hours of combing through the campus to make sure there was in fact not an actual bomb on campus. And so to my understanding as well, I'm not aware of there being another bomb threat, but we did receive one. And I think for us, if anything, I think it just it strengthens our resolve, right? So we will not be erased, right? We're not going away. Our institutions will endure. And so in spite of the clamor to somehow present a message that we are no longer needed or that we're not welcome where we are going to endure. We are going to be right here.
Wow. Wow. You guys gave me goosebumps. I am, I stand right along with those sentiments. Although I'm not at an HBCU, I think we all are products of them. Red, yellow, brown, black, or white, somehow in this country. So thank you for those sentiments. And thank you for so graciously navigating the curveball I threw you. So I want to kind of ask a question. I think, and whoever wants to jump in can jump in. I'm not going to point to anyone, but when you think about HBCUs and the history of the African American here since what was it 1619 documented, what do you think the position of that HBCU is in the Black community? What did it stand for and still stands for?
I'll jump in. I think what it stood for was an icon with the understanding that what was going to happen in these institutions was something that was going to benefit our people. Mm-hmm. I believe that they were firmly established because education was seen as essential. And it didn't really matter that there were controversies or supposed controversies about whether or not that education should be higher education or industrial education. And indeed, as I understand happening at Cheney, they really combined them both, particularly under Fannie Jackson Coppin, who I just love some of her words that I've been reading lately. But we understood that this was a path forward. This was something that was intended to uplift the race, that it was intended to bring us together as people and better our positions in this place. I think that that's still the case.
Yes.
I'm not sure, and we can discuss this at some point, but I'm not sure if that's as widespread among our people as it once was. That's something that concerns me deeply.
Well, so you dropped a few bombs in your explanation. We're gonna have to circle back on a couple of those bombs. Does anyone else kind of want to chime in on what you feel or think the purpose of HBCUs were in our community? Are they being served? You're on mute, Dr. Walker.
Sorry about that. I will piggyback off of Dr. Moses. And Cheney was established as an agriculture and an academic school back even actually in 1837. And I think that, again, because of the climate of today, I can see a rise in interest in not only Cheney, but other HBCUs. I think Dr. McLaughlin mentioned, our student athletes are now recognizing HBCUs as a valuable place to go and participate in your sports. Our students, we just shied away from that. But in the history of why we were developed in terms of academically and also athletically. Our students were not able to participate back in the 1800s in athletics. And if they did, they took our biggest and our brightest athletes and put them through turmoil. I can't even imagine being an athlete, some of the atrocities that they had to go through just in order to play on the football field. It's documented also that, you know, our athletes, as we moved into sport, that our athletes were also brought in for their athletic prowess, but not challenged academically. They were not given the correct classes. So therefore, after 4 years, they did their 4 years of sport competition, no degree. So it's critically important to our young people when you come to any institution of higher learning, but an HBCU, you must, in 4 or 5 years, walk out of the door with your degree.
Absolutely.
You have to. And you know, I don't know how many, and we all talk to students, you know, all of the time, just to say, you know, get up out of bed and come to class. Okay, because it's critically important in your academic development, you know. So we just have to keep charging forward.
I love that. I love that. So I'm going to jump in real quick, and I'm going to put it in the chat. There is a website for this Black History celebration for the month. I put that link in the chat, and I said that because Dr. Walker, she talked about some of the history of Cheyney University. Well, in our little known Black history facts for this month, that Cheyney University, there's a Black history fact for Cheyney University, and a lot of the history she talks about is listed in that fact. So you guys, I'm ADHD, so I can do more than one thing at the same time. So hopefully I didn't take you off track for what we were saying. But I want to kind of, I don't know if anyone wants to chime in on that, or if not, I can move on a little. You do? Okay, go ahead, Dr. McLaughlin. And okay, we'll let you both of them.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to chime in if I can, and I hope it's okay to share my screen for just a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Great. So I'm going to share my screen so that visual learners can sort of follow along with me if that's what works best for you. So part of what I was thinking about in response to that whole question of what do you think about when you think about an HBCU? And for me, I think about being unapologetically Black, being surrounded by a sea of beautiful Black faces, right? And so being surrounded by people who may look like you, but not necessarily think like you, right? Because there is no monolithic Black experience. And so I think an HBCU is also a place for you to find your history, to find Black history, where you'll find more than 1 or 2 courses in Black history. You'll find a number of different opportunities to learn about your history. And you'll also find that an HBCU is a place where you can find culture. So finding your culture, Black culture. And that will not as a central part of your experience at your institution and not sort of as an anomaly. So it'll be a place where you can find someone like the Ninth Wonder, who is a Grammy Award-winning producer on the faculty as a visiting artist in residence. Or you might hear Janelle Monáe's music or Little Baby's music integrated as part of a lesson plan, as central to the experiences that you have as part of your a part of attending an HBCU. And of course, the homecoming experience is a part of that experience as well. And at NCCU, we call it the ultimate homecoming experience. And so what would homecoming be like without a Greek stroll, without a pre-dawn celebration, without a parade, without a step show? You know, and though some of you may have only had a few Black teachers, throughout elementary, middle, or high school. At an HBCU, your chancellor will be Black, your dean will likely be Black, and most, if not all of your professors will also be Black as well. And so it's also a place where you'll find someone like Phoenix Sun guard Chris Paul attending a basketball practice. It's a place to find Black excellence, whether it's Black excellence in chemistry, in biology, in law, in business, in education, in government. And you'll find that Black excellence as part of the faculty and also as part of the students. So an HBCU is a place where you're going to find your history, you'll find Black culture, you'll see Black excellence, and it is a place to be yourself. We place a lot of weight on community service and serving our community and building leaders. So I think those are some of the things that I think about when I think about what it means to attend an HBCU and sort of what we might mean to the community.
Amazing, amazing. Coach, you wanted to drop in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. What I didn't share, going back to the beginning, I've also served in financial aid. They call me Coach J because I coached the wrestling teams and things like that, but I also did 20 years in financial aid, admissions, and compliance. So knowing that, and it's interesting that even today, I had a young man who came in prior to the panel today, talked about why it was important for him as far as being here at Cheyney University. And one of the things you'll find, and may ring through all the campuses, but in the Black community, you'll find that many of our parents or their grandparents, they want you to go to that HBCU to get them out of the neighborhood. With the things that are going on, you'll hear that if you're not a student at an HBCU, there are so many years I've heard students say, well, the reason I'm so glad you got my son or daughter out of the neighborhood. We look at it, and again, because we're so close to Philadelphia, when you look at the statistics, and when parents, and I remember my days of being in financial aid for 20 years, and those parents getting together to put their monies, they're putting the coin together to make that deposit for the application. It is so important because, again, the role that we play, you're talking about those young people at risk. They may not come out as the sharpest. I understand that we use SATs as a gauge to see how successful we'll be. But I've had students who've actually come out of the worst neighborhoods in Philadelphia and go on and become attorneys, become law enforcement. They go on doctors, nurses. So again, the importance of that HBCU as it relates to the community is that it's that place where even our parents who don't have those degrees can say, listen, they focus on getting you out. That's not putting you out of the house, but to say they want you to do better. So that's why I say it's so important and what our roles are at an HBCU and as faculty and staff. The important to work on a college campus means just so much because they're looking for those things they can't find at home. So I just want to add that piece on why it is so important and what our roles are in our neighborhoods, in our communities, and what it means to attend an HBCU.
I love that. I love that. I love that's one of the reasons I really wanted you on this panel, because I knew the time you spend in financial aid, and that is like I'm going to call it the gateway. One of the things that keeps many people away from college is the fact that it has to be paid for. They don't know that there's $50,000 or however many $1,000 of aid available to, every American, if you can just access that thing. So thank you for that input. I want to kind of ask another question that kind of blends back into some of the things that Dr. Moses brought out in a way. So she mentioned that she was concerned with some of the things that she's seeing with, I'm going to call it slides into the generation that most of our historically Black colleges and universities are serving now, that traditional grew. I'm not talking about the post-traditional students that we serve. I'm talking about those traditional students. So what shifts or changes have you seen in the perception of the importance of education or the meaning of that historically Black college or university, in our students who are partaking as a part of your service, enrolling in your schools? Is that shift positive? Is it negative? What are some of the things you're seeing?
I think my comment was referring more to the masses of Black people. We we know that our numbers have been decreasing in the HBCUs since integration.
Yes.
I wholeheartedly agree with Coach that it is a place where many mothers and fathers are saying, you go there because I want to get you out of the neighborhood. But we've come through some times when I have a dear friend who is now an ancestor who used to say, well, you know, the minute we got integrated in Raleigh, nobody wanted to shop at Mr. So-and-so's dress store. They could go to Hudson Belk. And I really feel that, and that's because we have the perception that because it is white or because it's coming from white, you know, that doll study,
Yes,
is a good thing to have, but it kind of warped our senses a little bit. Just because it's in the other house does not make it better. And too many of us, I feel, have withdrawn our dollars from the HBCU because the perception is we're going to get it done better over at the other place. Now, I can tell you from being at one of those other places that if we didn't have institutions like the African American Cultural Center, if we didn't have an instituted program where there would be someone who was specifically dedicated to assisting the African American students succeed, they would not have succeeded in those places. So what I'm saying is that the overall group of us who send our children to colleges really need to rethink what we're doing with our dollars. Because if we're sending our children to these schools to support these schools, we can certainly expect our schools to be accountable. And they have been for all this time. We need a lot more of our own support in these institutions. Wow.
you caught me on mute. I was dropping the link to the black doll versus the white doll, a video that was done on that in the chat, and you caught me in the middle of that, and like, you know, thinking globally that there's some adjustments that we need to make in our population. So one of the things we do know right now, if anyone else wants to chime in this, but one of the things we do really know right now that since 2012, there has been a large increase in the Black or African American population that's enrolling in universities in general across the country. However, there's been a decrease in HBCUs, but we've seen a bump in increase here recently. Right. Especially with Black males. Our university is basically online, the global campus. So there has been a much even larger increase in online universities, those partaking in universities that had that option with the African-American population. So I don't know, does anyone else want to shift? That was like a random fact I wanted to throw out, but does anyone else want to talk a little bit more about any shifts that you've seen along the way? In the generations or populations that you're serving at your university?
If I'd like to just say real quickly, one of the things I guess, as I don't want to call it a positive that came out of the COVID, a lot of the institutions across the country, along with HBCUs, they decided to go test optional, which again, before, students just kind of said to themselves, my SATs weren't enough to get into an institution or anything like that. So when a lot of the institutions decided to go test optional, gave us a little more, let me at least try, before I'm not, we get very competitive when it comes to who's going to be successful. So we use a test that was developed not with us in mind. So that test's been used for years to kind of keep us out of, as far as these other higher institutions and whatnot. So with COVID, now a lot of institutions went to optional testing, which may have, you saw a little small uptick in the males going in, because again, females are generally a little higher, they kind of get the grasp the education a little bit quicker than we do as males. But I noticed a little uptick in that when it came to the enrollment. And then also the challenges now with that gap year. That was one of the things I noticed that was being pushed a lot in the high schools, that take some time off. those high school instructors have a big influence on our young people, coming out of high school. I've heard statements from young people who said their counselors may have said, and that may be only because many of their high school teacher instructors may not be of their, African American. So that person who's encouraged may not be encouraging them to go to the HBCUs, attend my school, go here, that kind of. Our sharper students are pushed to I'm not going to knock any institution, but the Penn States or the Temples and things like that. So that right there, I've noticed a little bit as far as the enrollment piece, especially from a financial aid side of it, that I noticed as far as being in debt and that kind of thing. So
yes. So listen, this is fun. We should have scheduled this one for 2 hours. You guys are bringing up some points. We can have a whole lot of different conversations. I don't know if anyone else is hearing that other than me. But what I want to do is kind of move forward a little bit and see if we can leave at least 3-4 minutes. I don't know. And we'll check the chat to see if there's any questions that the audience has. But I want to ask each of you, if you could really quickly think about if you were going to give some advice, because you're our experts. You are it. You're on bat. You have the bat in your hand, and you're about to swing at the ball. You are working with our students today and have been, as Coach Johnson said, 30 years. So we've got some wisdom in the room. So we want to jump from that wisdom. What advice would you give anyone that's working with an African-American student in any position, in any type of university, in any capacity? What would you give them so that they can help that student be successful, not just at that university, but in life? So we give you the wait time. I tried to
I have my answer ready for you.
Let's go.
Well, actually, you asked the question of us in preparation, any teacher or any individual from K through college. So let me start with 1, genuinely love our African-American students.
Wonderful.
2, teach our children to read critically. Number 3, teach our children our story. Let me give you a very quick example. Most of us who do any little reading in history have understood that the carpetbaggers came to the South and they were eventually run out. But the story that we get is that all these white school marms came to teach all of these Black, and that's a good thing, to teach all of these Black children, and poor them. They had to stay in the homes of the Black people, et cetera, and they left. But they don't tell us how many Black teachers came from Cheney throughout the South to teach. So we've got to teach our story. Teach our children to use all of this technology in ways other than TikTok and, who's doing what with whom. Teach our children the value of wealth building and empowering our community, that Ujamaa spirit. Continue, and for those of us who are around the table, I know we're doing this, but anybody else, we've got to imbue in them the sense of belonging to a group and a sense of responsibility to the group. Those first students at Cheney were responsible largely for the 14th Amendment because they went to work. Our students that came out of the 60s, they were in the trenches. We've got to continue to teach our children to be in the trenches. And finally, genuinely love them.
Wow. All I can say is wow, wow, wow. I'm taking notes and then trying to throw it in the chat and getting ideas of the next time I speak, what I want to say. My goodness. Thank you for this. Thank you for this. Anyone else? Give us some advice.
If I can jump in, and I think what I would say is that I would say the importance of making connections between what we know to be best practices and actionable change. So we know how to serve our students. We know how to help our students to be successful. And so I think it's making that connection. And I think that part of that begins with critical self-reflection. So as educators are working with students of color, know that in that work with families of color, with students of color, that our students and families do not need to be fixed. They don't need to be rescued. They don't need to be pitied. I think that we look through the lens of societal injustice as we're looking at finding approaches to helping our students be successful through the lens of equity, privilege, bias, racism. And I think investing in history, learning about the history of people of color, about Black people, about current injustice. And I think making that transition from talking about equity, right, these conversations about what we can do, to taking equity action or equity execution. And I think treating the students that are in front of us as if they were our own birth children. So that whole question, what if Calvin was my son? And just not just looking at data as a sort of a nameless spreadsheet of numbers, but these are our children, our students. What do we know about their academic stories? How would our practices, our approaches differ if these were our own birth children? So I think approaching our work with students as if they're our own. And then very quickly want to share 6 best practices. And I would say we perpetuate inequity by not utilizing what we know will help students of color to be successful. And very quickly, I would say those 6 practices are leading discussions about race, racism, and the positive contributions of Black and Latinx people, and having that be a central part of our work with students. It's being dedicated to the success of students, so being those caring educators, of requiring students to do work, being available to students. One of my students likes to use the phrase breaking it down to the ground, right? So we take that highly complex material, that abstract subject matter, and help it be and make it accessible to our students, make it relevant to our students. I think we make sure that everyone gets called on. We're familiar with the research by Dr. Geneva Gay, where she talks about managing discourse. And as teachers, we know we control the discourse. We decide about wait time. We decide who gets called on, and making sure our students of color are part of the discourse in our classrooms. I think we are passionate, right? One of the best practices being passionate, being upbeat, taking material that maybe the students might think is boring or trivial and making it interesting, something students want to learn, being cheerful. And I think the last best practice would be making sure that we're maintaining highly structured classroom environments. These environments should be rigorous. We should have highly organized, clear instructions. And I think those are some of the things that we can do as best practices to ensure that we're better serving our students of color.
Amazing, amazing. Oh my goodness. Thank you for that. Any other advice, Coach, Dr. Walker?
Yes, I'd like to just share. I agree with Dr. McLaughlin and Dr. Moses on all of their points. And really just to add just a couple points that I find that have been beneficial to me that I pass on to all of my students. My area of specialty is recreation management, but I have a lot of other students in my classes. I just let my students know, whenever you're working with people, meet them where they are. Okay, everybody is coming with different baggage into our environment. And, I think in years past, we as educators think that we're here and our students are here. But, I do let my students know, as much as you're going to learn from me, I'm going to learn from you as well. And I think if we can, meet them where they are, wherever that is. Does it take a little bit more work? Yes, it does, because you might be meeting 41 different personalities. Okay, but that's our role as educators, and hopefully to the audience out there, that is when they get out in the world, they're going to have these experiences as well. The other thing is, let's not dummy our information down. I think Dr. McLaughlin just spoke on that. I have expectations for every one of my students in anything that I do, whether it's an academic, whether it's an intramural, whether it's a community something, and you're going to rise up to a certain level of expectation. If we don't expect anything from our students, then what are we going to get? we're not going to get very much if we have no expectation. So I therefore keep high expectations on my students because I want you to be successful. I want you to achieve. And lastly, passion. Be passionate about what you do. You know, I could retire. Why haven't I retired? Because I love what I do and I love the students that I interact with. And I hope they love me. I think they do. I think they do. I did have a student say, and he's graduated now, and I'll leave with this. He was getting through all of his major classes except my classes. And he got into class and he worked hard and did well, got A's in all of my classes. And I said, sir, how come, you waited and almost missed some of your classes? Well, I heard that you were hard and I heard that you worked us. But I said, and what's the verdict? What's the verdict? And he said, Professor Walker, you just love us and want to see us succeed. And that's what it's about. And it comes from passion. So whatever you do, young people, be passionate, no matter whether you're an educator, a business person, government person, no matter what it is, be passionate about what you do.
Coach, you gotta, I don't know why you waited till last, but
it's tough following 4 very strong young ladies. And I have to say that one of the things as an educator, my undergrad degree is in special ed in psychology. And I knew then I wanted to work with young people. And one thing about it, and on this level, you have to have a love. You can't be there's no gray area when it comes to young people. You have to love it in order to do it. And one of the things I try to put that responsibility on those students at always. I tell them, I had a conversation with a young lady about 3 weeks ago, and she wasn't doing the best she could in the classes. And I say, there are 3 words I don't want you to ever take away from your parents. Because I like to put that on them. And being a coach, I'm always have a game plan. And as I indicated, I say, don't ever take these 3 words from your parents, because I think about what you do. I use a technique called the 3 C's, choices, chances, consequences. And I've been using that since Dr. Miller was a student back at NYSP. And I've been using that for over 36 years. And I say that to say, I said to her, the one thing you never want to take away from your parents is these 3 words. He or she is at college. When you go to do something, when you're about to make a decision on something like that, the things that make your parents proud of you or make them proud is that when they ask, well, where's Hakeem? Where's Shaquita? Where's who? They're proud to say he or she is at college. When you go out there to try to do something or someone's trying to convince you to do something, don't ever take those 3 words from your parents, because it means a lot, because you're doing something that they couldn't do. And one thing about an HBCU, and I'm a hands-on kind of guy. And when I say hands-on is, as Professor Walker, Dr. Walker said, talk to our young people, not talk at them. Mm-hmm. Enough people that are talking at them, talk to them. Don't get upset when they may not have all the particulars that we have when it comes to the conversations and how to put our words together, but it's our role to correct that, and to correct it in a way in which I'm with you, understand it, and give them true to life examples. What I found out over time is when they understand that you're human too, they have a tendency to relate to you, building that bridge right there. And like I say, those 3, I use that 3 C's, choices, chances, consequences. And I always make sure that I explain to those students what that 3rd C stands for. Because we forever have always associated the word consequences with something negative. The consequences to be, if I decide to not play spades make a chance that I can study this for classwork for Professor Walker, my consequences may be I got a 95 on that test. So don't always associate it. So I've been using that for years. And I guess the last thing to say is that don't take anything for granted. Those opportunities they may not always come around. We sometimes will get a second chance to make a first impression, but again, you got to be prepared. When you're called up to bat, when you're called up to come into the game, or using athletic analogies, but you've got to be prepared and be ready to go. And again, it's hard for me when I look on this screen and see these panelists. Boy, I have to bring my A game.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Listen, this is more than I even thought would occur, even though I still hear about 2 more hours of conversation that we could go through. But that's just how much wisdom is in the room. Listen to my panelists. I'm not the panelists, the registration, the folks that are the participants that are watching. I want to personally apologize. We went over a little bit of time, and that was just me and my rambling and wanting to hear more of everyone. But I see folks are saying that they're inspired. I'm running through the chat, and it's just been a beautiful experience for folks. So doctors and professors and everyone on this panel, thank you for taking time out to educate and to, I'm going to say, expose us here at the University of Arizona Global Campus, whether we are faculty, students, staff, administration, school, board members, whoever is on board or is going to watch this recording. Thank you for the seeds you just deposited in us. And I pledge to do my very best to continue to work the ground, the soil at this university so that the seeds that you just planted will grow. So thank you for your time. I'm going to end, unless there's anything else you all want to say, I'm going to go ahead and kick us out and end us out, but I don't want to cut you off if there's anything. Okay, I'm seeing good smiles. So everyone is emptied out on this. Thank you very much. You guys that are watching, I just want to say to you all, listen, always know this. Well, I hope you grab some more so you can take with you to educate yourself, motivate yourself, and help yourself grow. But always remember this, make it a great day or not, because that choice is always yours. Thank you and have a great day.
And thank you, Dr. Miller, for your leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Dr. Miller. Panelists have been great too.
Panelists.
It has been.
Have you
It has
enjoyed
been.
it?
And
Wonderful,
please reach out,
wonderful.
anyone needing anything, please reach out to me at Cheney.
Oh, wow. I forgot to say that. Thank you for saying that.
Check us out at NCCU.
I did put it in the chat. I did put that in the chat.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.